I'm like just a little bit ahead of you, so we're just kind of on this.
Yeah,
this domino.
It's been moving a bit. And I'm like, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I know, it's funny how sometimes we're all synced up. Like, even though I live in Boise, I feel like I've checked in a couple times and we're like on the same. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
I'm always like, I'm at the point with my cycle where I'm like, after it's done, I'm just like, I did it!
Did anybody see that? I love that.
I'm coming back to life. This is amazing. Yes.
Yeah, sometimes the follicular phase can be like this kind of integration phase though too, and I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be feeling like spunky, and I'm feeling funky.
Yeah.
Instead,
Totally.
But anyways, Jess and Sinead, welcome to the Golden Exposure podcast. Sinead again and Jess for the first time. We've been planting seeds and watering them, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for you. And it's perfect timing because this is season 2 of the Golden Exposure podcast, where I always have to say this, where the weaving of philosophical minds, hearts, and spirits come together in the way of poetry to expose the golden matter of life itself. Yeah, I say it a little different every single time. But
Keeps it very sincere, you know? So nice.
Wait, what'd you say?
I just said it just keeps it so sincere and authentic.
Sinead and I are sharing a microphone today, so had to make a joke.
She wants to, you know.
Right? Yeah.
Lean close to you too, Jess.
I love this. Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, well, so Sinead and I just recorded things about birth, information about birth and physiological birth specifically, and we touched on the nervous system for 1 second. And then Jess is showing up as a chiropractor, and I figured...
so much more.
And so much.
And so much more.
So much more. Yes, I know. I'm like, I would love if you introduced yourself, Jess, and all that you're doing in the world. And then we'll move into talking about the nervous system and how it relates to birth specifically. And then, you know.
And postpartum. And postpartum, I think, even more than birth, don't you think, Jess? Because
beyond
the birth, everybody prepares for the birth as like this moment, and it takes quite a bit of preparation. And then, postpartum is that beautiful chaos that unfolds. Like, postpartum is really just like everything that happens after birth. Yeah. Until the end of time. Truly, in different capacities for sure, to be sure. There's definitely like an early postpartum period that you need to put some very specific mindful intention on, right? But nervous system, I think me and Jade were speaking of, like, I think with all of the common things, because I'm always kind of excavating like the dysfunction of our postpartum culture here, and like how far away we've gotten from kind of optimal as postpartum women, and a foundational piece, if not the most important, is weak nervous systems, like not being able to hold the full spectrum of possibilities, because you cannot handle an ounce of pressure, or you put every single ounce of pressure on yourself. There's gotta be something in between. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And that postpartum time and the state that you have in it is what allows the integration of birth.
So true. So true. It's
that
pretty
leaves
rich.
an imprint, right? And we get to unpack it over our entire lives, whether it's beautiful, blissful, whatever spectrum, right? It's on. That the quality of our nervous system is going to dictate how we integrate that experience.
So true. And we could argue that the preparation for the specific quality of your nervous system postpartum should happen prior to having children, no? Because you start to be kind of tested and everything about pregnancy is like kind of taking all that you have, you know, and that is the design of growing, you know, having the ability to perform a miracle by growing a child in your body. But you know, if you enter into that arena with a fractured nervous system, then you will inevitably be tested, you know, and be probably more fragile, you know, and it's already such a fragile thing, and then that's what it's supposed to be, right? It's like so delicate. But I feel like, you know, some foundational work, there's so much we could do to prepare for birth, but beyond the logistics, it's like all of it has to do with the nervous system, and people who work with the nervous systems of people in the childbearing year are of the utmost importance, you know, in that preparation process, and then all throughout, continually. There's no like, oh, you know, there's of course acute issues, I feel, you know, when you're working as a chiropractor, but ever since I started going to a chiropractor, I'm like, oh, this is a lifelong journey. This was made to support me through all of the ins and outs of life. Like, being that I'm not a postpartum woman, so I can't, you know, so in this way I prepare myself for potentially having a child one day, so that I can come in to that space fortified, you know, and be able to model that, you know, for other people, so that they can see, okay, this is a good investment, this is worth it, like, this is a foundational piece of my wellness, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, leading by example in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And Jess, you take care of a lot of mamas. Would you say that people
Come to you for like...
Start from the beginning of that.
Okay, yeah, sure. Sorry. I'm just taking over. Sorry, you guys. I just get so passionate, and I'm interviewing Jess on your podcast.
yeah, let's do this.
Sorry, Jayde. Sorry. No, I'll hold it. Now, Jess, would you say that most of the women that come to you in the childbearing years, like, where do you see most women coming for support from you?
I feel like I'm always on a spectrum with folks. Like I like comparing the continuum, like exactly what you're speaking to. Like, there's women that have come that have and are consciously working on their nervous systems, and they want to have babies one day. And what that's doing is not only a gift to themselves, but to that child, right? So what they're doing is they're working on expanding their nervous system bandwidth, or their nervous system capacity, which, when we really think of that, like, why is our capacity ever less than, you know, expansive, is typically the piling on of life, and it can really show up also in so many different ways for folks. It can be very physical for some, it can be very mental emotional for others, it can be very spiritual, like not fully expressing a self, and whatever way that comes through, that builds in the body, prevents that life force from flowing, and really limits someone's bandwidth or their flexibility or adaptability to life. And when you are spot on, we go into pregnancy, you know, no matter how expanded our nervous system is, there is going to be a stretch. Pregnancy is, like you said, it's preparing for the expansion that's happening. When we grow, you know, a baby, we bring another life through.
Yes.
So, you know, there's that woman that comes in and she is already actively working on expansion, and then when that time comes that she becomes pregnant and she goes through that force, like, there's just a little bit more ease in that process. Her nervous system is already able to say, I'm choosing a path of expansion, whether that's easy, hard, like I've chosen, right? To take on integrating my past, to take on moving through the layers that have built up over time, and to expand my nervous system in the process. And then there are the women that, they're coming in because they are learning that there's value in working with their nervous system, but maybe they're, 20 weeks into their pregnancy and they're having the signs of a nervous system that is a little bit less flexible. They're having pain or discomfort. They're having, emotional, meeting their walls. Like maybe it's anxiety that comes up a lot. I know you have the whole spectrum too, and it's not that we want these things to go away. It's more of like, can we expand our capacity so we can see that these things are shaping us and growing us into the person that our child needs us to be.
Wow. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
so nice,
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And for the audience, I would love if you could explain what the nervous system is, as if you were explaining it to, a second grader.
Sure. The way I like to describe the nervous system is as our processing system. So it's our information processor. We take in things through our senses. Sight, smell, taste, touch, intuition is an extension of our nervous system. We take in our environment, and we are constantly adapting and processing our environment. That's what we do all day, every day. We begin doing that when we develop in our mother's womb. They say about 50% of our personality, our personal reality, is developed by the time we are born, which means our mother's nervous system, how she's processing her world, shapes
Right, yeah.
the baby's
Generational.
nervous system. Yeah, it's how those things become sort of passed down as we begin to process in the womb, which the first 7 years of life we are in a different brainwave state. I know you are probably going to talk more about this, but we are more susceptible to just take in information sort of like a sponge. We don't have the discerning mind to say this doesn't resonate with me, or this isn't my path, or that's not kind, or whatever it may be. Like, we don't have the discerning mind as a child, so we take in, and that sort of becomes our foundation. And as we move through life, our nervous system, if it doesn't have the bandwidth, the resources, the resonance with something to process it in that moment, it's going to hold on to it as information. There's brilliant design to the body. If we didn't hold on to this information, we would never have a second chance to process through things. It would just be like, well, that's dust, or that's me, or that's history. It would be very stagnant.
So then it's evolution.
It's evolution.
Really,
The nervous system is what evolves us. Although it has this ancient architecture to it.
Absolutely.
It's very, like, there's a survival aspect, right? And then there's the part that we have some influence over, and the adaptability piece, and how we process our life comes through the nervous system.
Yeah. Wow.
Nailed it.
She nailed it. That was awesome. I was like thinking, like, even for somebody who specializes in nervous system works, being like that. If somebody asked me, like, what is birth? Like, if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, okay, hold on.
To a second grader.
I almost asked you that question in the beginning of our last one.
Gosh, and I just don't know if I could contain my response. And I just have to say, like, Jess is so eloquent and essential when she is speaking. And I think that really helps, because when we are talking about, like, being of the mind of, like, oh, I'm preparing, like, I'm not thinking of, like, the instant gratification of, like, you're in a good spot at this time in the world if you can identify that your nervous system needs work, right? So I'm like, I really honor that people arrive when they arrive, and I would love to see more people, like, anticipating a little bit more ahead. I feel like we're so used to working on, like, a reactionary basis. Like, we get sick and then we just fix it, or we fix a symptom, which is something that's been coming up a lot over the years, is like symptom management. But then you're not thinking, like, oh, I actually don't want to deal with this over and over and over again. And that's actually what a symptom is, when you just put a Band-Aid over a symptom. And so I think, like, the nervous system can be kind of ambiguous for people. And so explaining it in a way where maybe more people can identify, because we all have nervous systems. It's just like, I think it's so important to, like, translate these principles to a wider audience. Like, I'm so happy and grateful that we have a community here of like-minded individuals where we can speak this language, and there's no translation needed often. But thinking about work. Sorry, I get really nervous when there's like things like fly at me very fast. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, because there's a chiropractor like my neck, Jess. I'm gonna need your help in a minute.
That was like a feisty moth, and it's gone.
I know.
It's gone.
It's like the buzz. I'm like, oh my gosh,
that's our nervous system, everyone.
That was an incredible example.
For sure.
And her breath. Bring my own pillow next time. Now I know.
Yeah, for sure. Just with your womb being tender and low, I'm like, just support your pelvis. Just support your pelvis, you know?
My pelvis thanks you.
Beautiful. Okay, so we've tapped into the nervous system. We have moved to the shade. And
For sure. We're getting heated
in all sorts of ways. We all get very passionate about our things that all relate to each other. So then we're all just passionate about everything, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is so awesome. It's like this beautiful cauldron of isness, of reality and perception. Yeah, so I'm going to clip this on you. Okay. It's official.
Our fuzzy caterpillar things.
Yeah. I know.
Why don't you begin? Take us
You think? Okay.
maybe through the
the
birth
labor
and
part,
the-
yeah. And then we'll kind of talk about the translation of that. Also, I always like to honor, like, actually I'll just say this. It took me a while as a young aspiring midwife to feel worthy of supporting women during this phase of their life, because I have not had my own children, but there's this very specific role that I play where I am able to give myself, I have the ability to give myself fully to these women that are about to be giving everything to these kids, and I am able to have a fresh, clean slate for them every time. And I thought of that because I was like, I'm going to talk about brainwave states in labor, which I get to experience on a regular basis, being on the periphery of so many transformational experiences. But given that, Jess has had her own child, so she has experienced in her experience firsthand. And I always think it's so valuable to have the perspectives from both of the roles, right? Like, obviously, my role is very specific, and then a birthing woman, women want to hear from birthing women because they walked that walk, and if we ever have children, you and I, Jade, we will seek out the guidance of many wise women before us, and also we have such a good foundation and an understanding of birth and rebirth and life and rites of passage and things like that prepare us to really surrender into those moments with a little bit more ease, I hope. I don't know, I'm sure I'll just get I know. I know I'm very weary on that.
More acceptance.
For sure.
Of what is, like you were speaking earlier, who was speaking about it, making that choice, that decision to walk that path. Yeah. No matter if it's easy or if it's difficult or that really has nothing to do with it. It's walking that's how I feel about love in general. I'm like, it's not about finding the one that we are in love with. It's about walking the way of love. And that is all encompassing.
Oh, for sure, totally. And that can translate in every single scenario, I feel, truly. And, I can offer guidance on birth by, I study birth, birthing women live it. They are living that experience. So there's there's benefit for all. So
yes,
I think that's really nice.
Yeah,
totally.
Having someone who can translate where you are when you're in the depths is
totally
amazing.
Totally. And I hope that will serve me in my time, in that seat, in that different role, And I also know I'll probably be obliterated in the best way, because that's what it does. I'm like, okay, let's not use the word ease, we'll use the word obliterated. which is a little more harsh. But I think I'm, you know, I know, you know, what's ahead in a way. So
Ready to not be ready.
yeah, exactly. Ready to not be ready. Ooh, I love that. It should be on like a sweatshirt or something.
Yes.
Are you ready to not be ready?
It's just this baby crowning.
Yeah, for sure. You're like, there you are.
But it's like this really beautiful painting with
Yes.
like flowers. If anybody wants to make that
For
the
sure.
Golden Exposure.
Oh my gosh, totally. We're putting a call out.
Heart open.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So nice. Okay, so you want brain waves.
Yeah, let's encapsulate let's encapsulate the brainwave states that you go through during you know, preconception into pregnancy, into birth, and then postpartum.
Yeah.
If you could give us just kind of the rundown, and then we can have Jess kind of go into this a little bit deeper and how it correlates to the nervous system.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. Sorry, this is coming off. I'm just going to hold it, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
So I can give it to you too. I like sharing. It's nice. Okay, so brainwave states in labor. Preconception. Okay, so on a baseline, there are 2 waking brainwave states that, you know, majority of people live in one, and then there's a maybe smaller population of people that have learned to live in a slightly altered state while still participating in everyday life. That kind of the state that most people live in are where your brain waves are moving pretty fast in life. It kind of gives us the ability to get stressed out very easily and you know, multitask, be kind of like going about life, you know. It's a lot of like, yeah, not being able to like feel what's happening in your body as you're navigating life. So that is kind of what keeps us, you know, foundationally in a stressed out state. Those are called beta brainwaves. The name of those brainwaves are called beta. It's very easy to spot a person in beta because they're often just like, as someone who, as probably all of us can identify with, like tuning into our own nervous systems, you can feel someone else's nervous system. You can feel when they're in beta, you know, because they're not having a relay of energy with you while you're talking to them. They're very much like, yeah, no, you know. I always just like kind of chuckle because there are some women that come in so hard, you know, which is life on them. Yeah. And they're like, I'm not stressed. And I'm like, man, I can feel your stress from a mile away without even seeing you, you know? And so there is some work to do there. Like, you're going to have to be able to acknowledge that you're living in this brainwave state of beta, of like, you're in fight or flight. That's a great, like, a term in the nervous system world. Like, it's very much like survival mode, stress, like doing this, that, like high highs, low lows, like, you know, whatever. That's beta. Then there is when your brainwaves slow down slightly, that's a state called alpha. Jayde, you live in alpha. This is the way Jayde speaks and looks at life is in alpha brainwaves. This is what the bridge to the altered states of consciousness is. Like, alpha brainwaves is still a waking state, but the difference between a beta and an alpha person, a beta person jumps in the car, late for an appointment, parks, gets out of the car, runs in for the appointment. An alpha person might get in the car, already a little late, drive at a normal speed limit, park the car, get out of the car, start the walk to the appointment, but get distracted by a beautiful flower. You know? Like, alpha people are it's a very heightened sensatory experience while you're living life. Like, slightly psychedelic in the waking state. Being able to feel what happens in your digestion when someone's like, you want to go eat some ice cream? You know? Like, what does that feel like for you? Hopefully it feels good and exciting, but it may also feel like your body is saying no. You know? So alpha brainwaves are slightly slower than beta. And the alpha brainwaves are defined by a heightened sensatory experience. So like you notice like beautiful sounds or not beautiful sounds, or you're feeling like, you know, the people like that touch you while you're talking to them, you know, like, hey, you know, in a very gentle way. It's like, I'm feeling you feeling me.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Feeling me.
Yeah.
Feeling you, feeling me. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Is that a song?
so good. It should be. It should be. So, you know, so those being the waking states, those are like kind of the states that we can observe in the world on the day-to-day. How that translates into labor is we often start at the most kind of like surface level place, right? Because you're also like in the mind a lot, usually right before you go into labor. You're anticipating, you're nervous, you're trying to manage everything. So a woman in labor that's in beta can be really excited. It's very much like, oh my gosh, oh, okay, I just felt this. Cool. Can you let the dog out? Yep. Does everyone have a drink? Everybody good? She's still hosting. She's still hosting.
Which
you
is
know,
so cute.
in her labor. It is so sweet. And it's a normal part of the process to start there, right? Because it's an ultimate descent into things. But like early labor, the excitement, the surface level, you know, the first sensations of contractions where you may tell yourself, oh, it's not that bad. Like, okay, cool. You know, I'm good. I don't even have to worry about them feeling any more intense. That's very beta, you know? And that is good. That is completely fine. You inevitably, as labor progresses, sink into an alpha state. That's often where women end up getting held up. And in normal life, alpha can often be a very like beautiful, positive experience. In labor, it translates into like your sensatory system is heightened. So now you're like, oh, I don't care if you have a drink in your hand. You're annoying. Or like the nurse's perfume is so terrible. Or that sound, like get that sound out. Open the window. Like everything is heightened for you. And as you're descending, things are inevitably becoming less and less in your control, so you're uncomfortable. So you're not necessarily feeling like all of the outside stuff is beautiful. You're more like affected more by the energy of other people and sights and sounds and touch, like don't touch me, you know, this kind of thing. And that's often where women stay. They kind of bounce back and forth between beta and alpha, which if those were the only two brainwave states, we would be done with the conversation, right? But they're not. There is like such a journey to be had that you don't really get access to in everyday life, I would say, for most people when you go into labor. And if you create an environment and the correct support around you to allow you to make that descent without distracting you, you know, it inevitably like takes you from a place in alpha where your pain threshold is the main star of the show. Like all of a sudden it's all about like, I'm not comfortable. I'm not going to be able to do this, you know, which is where a lot of women end up in the hospital because they're not aware really of like operating with this kind of understanding of the normal slowing down of the brainwaves. Well, if you're able to slow your brainwaves down slower than alpha, you hit a state called theta. Theta brainwaves is not necessarily a waking state anymore. You can be awake, but you're no longer communicating with the room in words. It's a very inward journey. It's like being in a meditation. Would you say, Jess?
Yep.
Theta.
That's what I typically associate it with as well.
Yeah.
Or like right before you're drifting to sleep, that sort of like starting to dream like, but not quite.
Yes. Like straddling kind of two worlds almost. When a woman comes into theta in labor, she now has the ability to sink past the pain threshold. So you hear people be like, I had a pain-free birth. That's not bullshit. That's possible, you know?
But it's in the
A lot of
brain waves.
Yeah, it's in the brain waves. It's in the perception, you know. It's in the biochemical nature of the brain. It's also in the perception, you know, which are two separate things, but they go hand in hand. So when a woman goes into theta, you know, and I talk about brainwave states a lot in my birth prep classes because it's such a good thing for birthing partners, especially male birthing partners.
Perfect. I wanted to get into partners too and how they
Cool.
can support
Yes.
more.
And there's less things for them to do and more just understanding of what it is, and this is for sure part of that.
Yeah.
Like men are often looking to check the boxes, you know, like what am I supposed to do at the birth? I'm just kind of like, it's like a lot. It's like not about what you're gonna do. It's like you just gotta be with her. I'm like, you gotta stay with her. Even if you leave the room, don't leave her energetically. You have to like build your stamina and get ready to ride it. You know, and that and when a woman drops into theta, they might not have the reciprocation that they're used to having, which means like women, you know, when you're like exploring a liminal space like beyond a pain threshold, you're not putting words to it. You're like in a state where you're not communicating outside, you're communicating inside. So you're taking stock of your own things. This is where you heal deeply. This is where you heal your wounds. You could do talk therapy all day, but if it's not leading you inside to a state of theta, you're not going to get the work done. And you're going to be like, why is this pattern keep coming up over and over? I thought it was done, and then it came back for a victory lap. You know, for sure. And I was just like, what? I thought I was done with this. Well, you didn't. If you didn't go clear it up in your journey, and I mean, you could argue like people use, you know, plant medicine and ceremony and stuff like that to get to that space to do that work.
And even just meditation, like when I guide my drum journeys or meditation in general, I witness people go into those spaces, and it's so incredible. Like we all have the incredible honor of witnessing people moving into theta and moving those things up and through, and you see them afterwards, and it's like they have been on a quantum journey. Their eyes are brighter, their skin is glowing. It is really incredible.
Totally.
But
So I think, you know, going back to like partners and birth with women in theta, it's like we speak about it so that they are able to kind of make their own identification, like, okay, where are we at? If she's like having an intense experience and she's like trying to like work through it out loud, she's probably an alpha. She probably needs some affirmation. She needs some presence. She needs connection here. But if she kind of moves past that and things go a little bit more intense but quieter, do not disturb her. Like, don't disturb her by asking her, hey, do you want a drink of water? It's like, no, you just get the water and you put it in front of her face and she'll take it if she wants it, right? And this is like low pressure, right? Because not everyone is like thinking about the logistics of like being in these states. And I tell the men that because I don't want them to feel pressure. It's for their benefit and for her benefit, for them to understand like unnecessary dialogue will pull her out of a state where she gets to be farther away from the threshold of pain and closer to cosmic consciousness. You know? So, and you as the birthing partner, as the midwife or anybody who's there, you get to ride the tails, her coattails. You don't get to take her journey with her, you know, you can't possibly, because you're a different role. And also as a midwife, you kind of are signing the contract to like, hey, I'll stay up closer to the surface, okay? Like, you don't need to check in to make sure that you're not being overlooked or that everything is okay. I want women to feel like they can swim in the depths and that they trust that if something is not right, I will call them up to the surface, or they will feel it from the deepest place and they'll come up and tell me. That's the other thing, you know, is like what a woman's experience and what she's feeling in her body is a very important information for me as you know, as a person who takes care of people in childbirth, you know, that, you know, and in which that experience can become very real very quickly, especially when the baby is there, right? And then also when, you know, the minority of the time when things kind of move out of the range of normal, you know, I do have to call people up sometimes and say, hey, we got to investigate this. You know, let's try to resolve this, and then I'll send you back down into the depths, you know, and you can get comfy down there. But that theta place, you know, she's kind of getting closer to this like wild animal stage. She's not quite there. It's not like what it's a little bit more like no words, more like groaning, or sometimes it's just quiet, you know. She just kind of like deep in it. And she doesn't need, and she'll come up to ask her questions if she has them, but like the minimal interaction, the better. I've had to like call, you know, the people at a birth together in the other room and be like, we need to let her go down now. You know, before the chit-chatting and the laughing was a good thing, but she's ready to continue the journey. And, you know, in the most loving way, we must allow her to descend without stimulating her. Because she's, you know, women by nature are also very overly polite. So like not answering a question is really kind of out of the realm of what they normally do. They want to be polite. They want to make sure that everyone's taken care of, and they'll strive to hang on to that somehow if people need it. But the point is like other people should not need anything in your birth space. I mean, that's it. Like, it's your space. So that's that. You're the star of the show, and you get to go to the edge of consciousness, you know? And so
you say it so casually.
I know.
you get to go to the edge of consciousness.
For sure. Totally. For sure.
That is what I would say if I was explaining birth to second graders. There you go. You've got it.
Yes, for sure. Totally. Okay, nice. Thanks for helping me work that out, just in case anyone else asks me, what is birth?
I'm going to ask you on like at least a biannual basis, what is birth, Sinead?
Okay, I'll start taking notes as the inspiration comes up so I can be prepared to put it into words. But so the last brainwave state that we kind of generally have the potentiality of entering, which is a very rare place, but not in deep REM sleep, I would say, and also a deeper state of meditation. These brainwaves are called delta brainwaves. Delta is at the edge of consciousness. Some people would describe it as like where God is, you know? Some people would describe it as like the line of life and death. You know, you are on the line. You're at the edge of everything that is real and alive, and there's just one step over the line, and then it's like no limit. That is cosmic consciousness. And so when some women report like feeling like they died and came back with their baby. Not physically, but it makes sense because when a woman is in delta, it often gets very primal. Like she may have her eyes open and she doesn't see you. Wow. She can't hear you. She's in it. They may be closed. She may start making sounds that you as her husband or partner have never heard her make, and you've known her for however many years, you know? Being prepared to hold that in your nervous system is the best gift that you could give a woman. That safety of being like, oh, I don't have this kind of chaotic nervous system being like, this is what's happening, you know? It's more just kind of like, oh, this is what they said was gonna happen. You know, you're in this deep state. And if you think about it in the hospital, you know, and this is no bias, at this moment anyways towards the hospital because they just don't know. So if you think about like watching birth on TV, and some women can transcend environment and go to that place in the hospital, you know? So that's the other thing. But like a woman starts to descend and she's kind of going to the line of life and death, which on the outside can look pretty intimidating, you know? Because you're like no longer part of the sensatory world. You're in a totally other world. And so an OB or a nurse may be like, you see them going close to you and snapping, stay with me. And this brings them up into a state of what? And now you hear this faraway thing and you like are climbing up back into these brain waves where everything kind of can suck, you know, like all of a sudden it's like way intense again and you're just wildly uncomfortable, you know, and there are people bossing you. You know, and before none of that actually mattered. All that mattered is that you were heading to a space. They say that babies in the womb live in delta. And that pregnant women are dominantly in alpha at a baseline. Some of them are in beta because of their circumstance, which I'm sure Jess knows all about, you know, seeing mamas, but in a well-supported woman in the state of pregnancy, she's an alpha. That's what pregnancy brain is. When women go to the grocery store and they're like, whoa, I just spent 25 minutes in the cereal aisle and I don't even eat cereal, you know? And people are like, oh my gosh, pregnancy brain. It's like, yeah, that's actually a real thing. Yeah. It's healthy.
It's beautiful. It's supportive of the development.
Yes, for sure.
Just kind of getting out of the way so your body can build and create this human being is what I'm hearing and what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think when you retrieve your baby, you're coming back from a state of delta. So that's another reason, like in undisturbed birth, when a baby comes, you know, I find in a very honest way that I take on the role of quote unquote care provider, because that's what midwives are. But I think what I said to you before is like, I'm not there to save you. I have skills to offer you, but I can't tell you your destiny, you know? So in a way, there's this state of management that you ultimately go into because women are expecting to be like, okay, as the baby's coming out or whatever, you know, I need you to tell me it's okay, or it differs for every woman. And being able to translate that correctly is the actual skill. But when a woman is in this state where she's scrambling to the top of her mountain, she's like, okay, I can see the ascent. I can't even believe I did this, because back at the fall summit, I was like, I can't do it. There's just no way. But I've also traversed so much since then. You're scrambling to the top. They're so far out. They're potentially in cosmic consciousness. I'm not going to bombard them with words the second their baby comes. Because they're deep, you know? And that could disturb somebody very easily. Bring them back in immediately when that's not necessary. Sometimes it's necessary if I need to tend to something that is not normal, right? And often they're still out of it, and I just tend to it. It's more like me and Dad. We're doing our thing, you know, being on the beta brainwaves, problem solving. Outside. That's our job. You know, Mom's job is to like be in her state, and if I need her participation, I will call her in. And that being said, like, there's never touching or giving of anything to a woman without her permission, you know? So there's a state of like being able to gently be like, hey, you know, this is not a normal amount of bleeding anymore, you know? Or we're reaching a line that is gonna be unsafe. If it continues this way, these are the options. Sometimes if things move very fast, I go straight for what I feel is going to stop a hemorrhage in its tracks, and I'll say, okay, can I give you meds? Like, we're kind of past the point of using gentler, less disruptive things. Like, we need to stop this now, or else you're not going to feel well very soon. And at that point, they're like, okay, You know, no one has ever said no because they trust me. You know, I spend all this time building the relationship and they trust me. So them being in Delta, and then, you know, in a way we're talking about normal physiological birth, right? And I just brought up the exception to that of like needing to pull them back a little bit sooner than I would like. But if a woman births in power, her baby is transitioning just fine, you know? I don't need to disrupt her. I don't need to touch her. I don't need to touch a pink, screaming, flexed baby with a stethoscope. You know, I can do that in a little bit. The baby is clearly thriving, you know? So it's like you create a space for her. Like I did a birth just recently, and she was on the bed. She had wanted to give birth in the water, and we identified, okay, we need gravity. This isn't working. She'd been pushing for a long time, and she was petering out. And I said, okay, this happens sometimes, and we're gonna need to go. But yeah. And so anyway, she pushed her baby out on her knees. Like she was on her hands and knees, and then she rose up to a full supine position on her knees and pushed her baby out and held her baby. And she stood on her knees, like straight up, for probably 6 minutes after giving birth. And I think at one point I had said, hey, do you want to turn around and lay back? Like I made this thing. And she couldn't hear me. She was like, you know, and then I realized I'm like, oh yeah, she'll do whatever she wants to do. You know what I mean?
She'll make her way.
She'll
when
make
she's
her way.
ready.
You just make the environment, and she'll make her way. And that's where I stay humble, you know, in those things, and understanding where is she in her brain, you know. And I test it sometimes. I'm like, hello, are you there? And it's like, oh, you're not back yet. Okay, take your time. All is well.
Yeah,
you know,
like an animal birthing in nature that you don't speak the same language. You're like, I'll just make this nice little fluffy pillow here for when you're ready to rest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I'll be right here, you know, continuing to witness you. So
and that's why the information is so important, and why it felt so important to share, you know, what are these things? What are these brainwave states? What is the nervous system? So then we can leverage our biology and really, really trust, have faith, and allow for the unfolding of miracles, as you said.
Yeah, so good. Just went to Delta myself and back there. I'm like, was I talking for an hour? Jeez. Not always, but sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, did I miss something?
To check before, yes.
Oh, I bet,
It's a little hard, but I think I hope I'm getting more resilient there. I hope I'm not getting weaker.
I feel like
it's
just
hard to say.
Based on where you were before, like a year ago to now, I can just like witness within you. I feel like you've actually come a long ways with the not waking up in panic.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. Reflecting that helps me.
And I like the idea of it's like we're just tracing that beta response, right? Just like noticing the outline of like, woo, there it was, and then like that. Totally. Am I getting better at it? Is that like dropping back to my baseline?
For sure. Yes, okay. Yes.
Growing my baseline, whatever it may be.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. That was like perfectly in response to all that we were talking about on the last, section of this. And I'd be so curious from your point of view, from your perspective and vantage point in this life as a chiropractor and so much more. What is your response to that? What do you see with people coming into your clinic? And
that was such a beautiful like illustration of the journey, and there's like birth is such a unique experience, right? That you two have not yet had that privilege, and yet you like are already so aware of it. And then like what does that like mean and look like in our everyday lives? And like Jayde, you kind of brought it to like, meditation is this opportunity to drop into theta, right? Like there are these ways, and I think of it like those states yes, we're like dominant, and there are people that are very dominant in beta. Like that's the world I came from. My parents didn't know, couldn't express, share with me anything. So I was this kiddo like being like, there's so much going on. It's like intense, and you know, I found that later, like, oh, there's other shades of life. And of course, like as a kid, I like thrived in my alpha experience of being in nature and all these things. But it's like these, I almost think of it like shifting the gears of the car. It's like the car is gonna, it can't always drive in beta, right? It can't always drive, like it needs to shift, right? And like their birth is this incredible like experience, and almost like you're speaking to the opportunity where it can be a total rebirth and reset, right? Like there's so much opportunity there, and there's no shame that we have every experience, and those of us that didn't know like that physiological journey and how brilliant it can be, like but there's still an opportunity. We have opportunities all the time to rewrite our experience, and
dying to be reborn all the time.
All the time.
Yep. Yeah, we go to sleep to wake up again.
Yes. Yeah, we get to touch that delta, right? Like, that's, I think, innately how we're designed, is to have that experience. And that when it doesn't always happen that way, like how do we get to notice and start to, as I was saying, like trace the outlines of what the nervous system is doing so we can expand into the other states. I personally, when you were sharing that, it actually brought up a lot to me. I, as a young girl, had very painful menstrual cycles, and it wasn't until well into like receiving chiropractic and starting to change my lifestyle that I would still occasionally have one, and I realized that I could let myself go into the pain and I would arrive at the theta state. And it is the biggest gift, because our world is taught to resist pain and to run away from it and seek this instant, whether it's fix, comfort, pleasure. We're just very driven as animals, I was going to say, as humans, the animal part of us, to avoid pain and seek the opposite. And I think that we, like, looking around at, like, that was my example of how I could have these mini resets, is like if I let myself drop into that theta where I could experience that, like I actually open in the pain, and it's like going into the darkness, the unknown, and in there, like, my nervous system is rewiring. It's rewiring all of the like pain or being small or shutting down or running away, right? And it's saying, like, it's actually safe to embody this experience. It's safe to be a woman. It's safe to, you know, be doing things differently. It's safe to open, even though I'm afraid.
Yeah, and it's actually safer. I feel like this is how I rationalized it for myself. I'm like, I can see clearer, which means it is safer if I allow myself to really drop in. So if something is actually not safe, then I will know in an instant. Whereas if everything is painted with this unsafety, then I won't be able to see the contrast as well. So allowing that, and part of that is creating environments for myself that feel that way. And environments include my internal environment, which is the nervous system. And it's so the opposite of numbing out or bypassing the reality.
I love that. I feel like, I'll come close to you. Okay. Sorry.
Perfect.
I'm just so inspired because I'm like, I love that we're able to like weave experiences together, like when you're translating these principles out, and how like that it's the same with birth, right? Like you create an optimal environment for someone to let their guard down and let nature take its course, then the risk of complications goes way down, right? Like in the hospital, their statistics are unrelated to our statistics in home birth. You know what I mean? Because we create the environment. They are getting better at translating like the principle of that in the hospital, and I commend them for trying, but you know, it's a whole other conversation for another day. But I feel like it's so important to note, like, you're doing this work now and it's benefiting everyone else when you like go into those spaces when you feel ready to and like rewire, right?
Yeah.
For me, it might be my personality because I'm such a grassroots person, but I'm like, I have this fuel to do the work, not just for myself, but for everybody. I'm like, this is productive. This is moving forward. This is only good, whatever is going on. And it doesn't mean it's easy, you know, and it feels inspiring, and it doesn't feel overwhelming to me. It feels like, let's get to work. Like we have lots of important, like we are important. We are all important. We have lots of work to do on this planet, and let's do it together with the same mission of like being better, you know, being better for
more
the
optimal.
Collective.
Yeah, I think sometimes the better can be so in our achiever minds, you know, so in that beta to be better, but it's like how can we optimize our existence, and how can we dream an existence that is more held, that is more free, more sovereign, more liberated. I've always been a freedom seeker, like from the time I came out of the womb. I mean, probably even being conceived was like, hey, I'm here, you know? And so it's, you know, I'm always like, what is the path to freedom? And a lot of times, it's that unfolding and that allowing, and allowing ourselves to be curious enough to go into those places of pain,
which stems from that nervous system piece, like bring it back around. It's like if you can't, like, the idea of doing hard work is hard on someone who has a weak nervous system. They're like, no, I don't have the energy for that.
Right.
I can't handle that. I can't handle the pressure of that.
Which was so much compassion, because it's like our world with all of these, everything that's, you know, coming in at us from so many different directions, internally and externally. It is a lot for those of us who are resilient. It's still a lot, though. The overwhelm, the perception of the overwhelm, I feel is different.
Totally.
It makes me think of too, like the next generation and the kids.
Your son.
Sweet
little baby.
I know.
I'm like, I want to be better for him.
You know? I know, like we're in such a unique time in the world where that's what I want to see more of, and yet I feel like we're, you know, moving through like, you know, darkness to see light sometimes. But it's keeps me going to think of more of those bright little babes out in the world. Thank you for bringing them forward.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Watching you be mama is just so beautiful. I love it so much.
It's so special.
Yeah. Let's speak to your experience as a mama a little bit. And how that has fortified your nervous system and just life in general.
That's beautiful. Let's see. Me move through, like, our birth experience left some things to be integrated, as, you know, I don't know, many of them do. And I feel like we kind of, because we came out with some interruption, I'll say that, during the end of the birth, it meant that those next coming weeks and maybe even first couple months was like I needed to stay close and to be inward, because it's almost like I didn't get my delta, so I like needed to drop in a lot to like restore that connection. And just like want to extend that to mamas that maybe do go through that period where they're like, this wasn't what I was expecting, this was, you know, whatever it may be, like, you know, you can just feel really tender in that time, even if you know, like, you're like, I'm on the right path. Like, I always knew I was on the right path, but I was like, this is a tender, and like, a little bit, like, some of it felt really abrupt, and I think it was a lot maybe to do with some of that interference that happened at the end of my birth. it just took a lot of tending to get the nervous system back to a baseline in a new experience, right? Because you're also bringing forward this new life and learning so many new things. And I extend a lot of compassion to that self and know that, like, if I were to choose to have another baby, I imagine it could be a very different experience because of the healing we do around one birth, right? And how much we can learn. And it's not, again, about it being a wonderful, perfect experience. It's really about just growing that, again, a capacity to, if I choose to, hold an experience like that and move through it in perhaps a different way. But over the course of, like, being able to watch him develop and how it's shaped my nervous system is sort of what you're asking.
Yeah, that was part of it. I just left it pretty open.
I like having things to respond to, so I'll just do my best.
Yeah, but I mean, watching you mother has been, like I said, such an honor, such a beautiful thing, because you're really, I mean, your perception, because of what you do in the world and because of your journey, you are paving a new path.
Sure.
And just witnessing that, and the way that you bring him back to himself, and the way that you tune into his body and his nervous system and see where he's at and make decisions based on that. And then becoming even more of your own person through the process, because I feel a lot of people can get lost in the mothering, which is probably part of it. It's probably part of it.
So true.
And it's just life in general. We get lost in our creative projects. We get lost in our career, and lost not as in like, oh my gosh, where am I necessarily, but it's like, okay, like this is all open water here. And we're creating this experience together.
Yes, I really feel into that, and thank you for highlighting our experience. And it is so true. I mentioned, I think it was when we were talking, that like I grew up in a very, like, my parents are very much in that beta, problem solving, working hard environment, and I knew, like, having a child, that I wanted to do things really differently, and I didn't want my son to feel that, like, mommy's never there for me. Like, because even though they were there, at the end of the day, they weren't there in a, like, energized, receptive, like, they were tired, right?
High quality presence.
Yes, which
Can you say that again? I love that.
Oh.
High quality presence in parenthood.
And they are wonderful, and it's nothing against them. It's, again, like you spoke to, it's the world that many are sort of conditioned in, and I think many are asking the questions of, like, how do we step out of this? But I knew I wanted to be so much more receptive to him, just knowing I've always been on that receptive spectrum, and just really, like, can experience so much aliveness. He and our time together, like, being able to be the mother I've been called to be, has been so healing for both of us, because it's given me, again, that, like, softness in childhood and listening, and it's like, as he gets older, it becomes, I find it fun to, like, play the game of, like, wow, he's now, like, so much more like his own person. This is his own journey. And to realize and witness then when things are my things that are, like, coming through for healing, like, it just becomes, like, kind of this fun letting go, to be like, wow, he really is on his own path. Like, if something happens, I can be there to support, like, his integration of it, right? His processing of, like, you know, that was really hard, and, like, I'm here, you know, with you, because that's what brings us to baseline. We're co-regulating. I'm here to, like, hold space while you ride that wave, kind of like the midwife. Mother's energy is, like, kind of a similar but different. And then, like, I have my own things, right? Life throws me curveballs or whatever it may be that, like, may bring up the old pattern, and I'm now getting to witness, like, oh, that's something that's been passed down, and I don't want to pass it on anymore, and I get to do my own work, and it's
I commend you. truly.
Yeah.
Honestly, like this is happening. It feels so hopeful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels so hopeful and liberating that we're just getting it done.
Yeah.
You know, without
Yeah.
any big criticisms anymore. Like we've moved through like grieving the fact that most of our parents weren't able to give us the amount of emotional presence that our spirits needed, and it feels like truly so generational, and it makes it feel more like, okay, that was a time and now this is a time, and we have work to do, and it's hard work, but we're all up for it, like you know.
Like we chose to. I mean, that's the feeling I feel we all feel, is that feeling you, feeling me, feeling you.
For sure. Yes. Yep. For sure.
That we all really chose to come here and do that work. And it's like as you were speaking, when you said happening, I'm like, happening is a verb. Yeah. And it's like a verb without expectation, a verb without the anxiety. It's a verb of knowingness and faith in the mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Yeah.